Welcome to Foxhole Symphony, a podcast about the transformational value of men in authentic community.
In our Foxhole, men are equipped to build relationships that foster belonging, accountability, and growth.
Stop believing the lie that you can thrive in isolation and instead
join us on the journey from broken to whole. Hey everybody, welcome back to Foxhole Symphony Podcast. This is Sarge with my special host,
Hey,
Mark Baba Ganoush, lovingly known as, and a special guest in the Foxhole. We are so excited, so excited. We've been waiting for this. Before I even introduce you, I'll have you know, Mark and I, before we even launched the podcast, we made like a top 10 list, a who's who list of guests, and we were like, if we could just dream for a second of the top 10 guests we'd want in the Foxhole, who would it be? And I'm like, all right. Like Craig Rochelle would be awesome. Let's get Craig on.
Justin Camp.
You know, Justin Camp, Bob Goff, Rob Chifokoyo.
What?
Yes.
I have the list.
And
he did.
This is true.
Yeah.
And so here he is, live in the Foxhole this morning. We've got our dear friend, Rob Chifokoyo. And I'll just quickly introduce him to our listeners. Rob is a passionate man, a passionate follower of Jesus. He's a husband, a loving husband. I've seen that at work, and a dad of two beautiful little girls, 8 and 4. He's a pastor, an author, a speaker. He was born and raised in Zimbabwe, and he brings just a much-needed multicultural and global perspective to Christians here in the U.S., and I'm excited to have him share that with you today. Rob's passion for Jesus and his sense of humor especially make him just an incredibly engaging speaker. Mark and I have had the opportunity and the blessing to hear Rob speak many times, and we're always on the edge of our seats. And, his speaking just connects well with people of all ages and stages and walks of life, no matter who you are or where you're from. And I've heard him speak not only here in the U.S., but in Zimbabwe as well. And it's always awesome. So, thank you for being here and welcome to the Foxhole.
Hey, I'm a fan. I'm a fan of the podcast. And so I am super honored to be on a list with, Bob Goff. This is wild.
Yes.
This is wild. I was like, this
By the way,
amazing.
Bob hasn't returned our call.
Oh, not yet. Okay.
No.
Shout out to Bob.
Yeah, shout out Bob Goff. Bob, love does, baby. We love you. And
Have one of your people call our people.
Yeah, we're gonna be in touch. Actually, we're gonna have Rob call him. He's got him on speed. Just text him at the end of the podcast. Rob was hanging out with Bob a few months ago. Was it a few months ago?
Yeah, a few months ago. No,
Really?
It was awesome. It was awesome. I enjoyed it. Like, it was my first time meeting him, and he definitely is who he says he is. It was just a phenomenal experience to hang out with
real
Bob.
guy.
Real dude. Yeah.
So I have a quick anecdote. You taught me something you don't even realize. This is years and years ago, but you taught me it was okay to belly laugh in church.
That's awesome.
I'm not joking. Long story made short, I'm sitting there listening to you, and all of a sudden, I don't recall what you said. My wife and I are just sitting there laughing our butts off, and I'm looking around like everybody's laughing their butts off.
Oh, absolutely.
So thank you for showing us that.
Absolutely.
I'm glad. I'm glad that happened for you. Like, yes,
Me too.
Yeah.
Come on, you've heard that plenty. We know it. So before we jump in, just a little relational context. Rob and I met in Zimbabwe. Under the shade of a mango tree. If you could just picture that.
Yes.
It's been an amazing journey, man. It's been, I don't know how many years ago that was, but it's quite a few.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I met you, so we were both much younger men.
Yeah.
You especially were a younger man, and you had a ministry.
Wait, hold on. He's aged less than you? Is that what you're...
100%.
Okay.
Absolutely. Look at me. I'm
sorry.
And look at him. He's got braces. Okay? So
I love it.
Let's just be real.
This is real. This is getting real.
It's getting real right away.
I'm airing Rob's dirty laundry right up front. So the long and short of it is, Rob had a ministry called 99 for 1.
Yeah.
And man, I'll just never forget that. Like, you still are on fire, but I just remember you galvanizing people to get out and, speaking of Bob Goff, to just get out and love on people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I remember specifically while we were there that weekend, you had a couple of very specific initiatives that you were gathering young adults to go out and love on people, two groups of people. One was the elderly at a nursing home,
I remember.
and you were going to paint nails.
I remember.
So here's a bunch of young men, young adult men
Awesome.
in Zimbabwe going to do manicures, right? You can only imagine the faces of these poor old ladies going, no, like, don't touch my nails. Sit with me, talk with me, but please stick to what you know, right? And no, I'm sure they
your Bible.
loved it. And the other group was group of prostitutes.
Yeah.
And they were going out to hand out roses.
Yeah. Yeah. Give them roses.
To give them roses on the streets and tell them how much they were loved by God.
Yeah.
Wow.
And and that was a regular occurrence. And then you started doing conferences, and which is really cool, and just gathering people from around the country of Zimbabwe. So
Yeah. Those ministry ideas that come out of the heart of a 26-year-old who's thinking, oh, let's just go and love people. Like, I just read the Bible. This is what it looks like. This is what the next step looks like. Let's just go and love people who are far from God and people who seem unlovable or have been cast out by society. And I remember that. I remember just the unction coming from that. But, didn't think it through, handing out roses to prostitutes, and cops come through, and you're like, it's a ministry. It's like they've never heard that before.
Sure it is.
Yeah, right.
Sure, yeah. We didn't think it through all the way to the end.
Probably better. There's a lot of God things like that.
This sounds like a great idea. Yeah. Right. Until you're handcuffed behind your back.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh my gosh. Well, that's yeah. I'm reminiscing. I'm sitting here and going, wow, man, we've both come a long way, and it's been quite a journey, and our lives intertwined, right? Like Mark with Maria, with your sweet wife there in Zimbabwe
Amazing.
as well, and here we are. And you've been in the States now for how many years?
8 years. I've been here for
been
8
8
years.
years?
Yeah. Which means we probably met like 10, 11 years ago.
Right.
Because when we met, I was single. I wasn't married. I was just a young bachelor trying to live his life with a bunch of young
Handing out
guys.
roses.
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, you've known me since I was a young guy, and much to do. Just a amazing thing about you, Steve, that I can point out is that I would come here to the US, and stay in your home for a few days, and you'd take me to baseball games and introduce me to pizza, like which is not like, it's not fair, because the pizza we had in Zimbabwe and the pizza, you're like, Rob, this is not pizza. It's like, this is pizza.
What was the best pizza you had in Zimbabwe? Probably Domino's, right?
We had like a version of Domino's.
Oh, it wasn't even Domino's.
Yeah, it wasn't even. There's no Domino's in Zimbabwe.
Oh.
Yeah, we would come here and be like Domino's. We would think like like a group of Italians in the back of Domino's making it. It was so good. And Steve was like, that's not pizza. Like, let me show
Domino's.
you. Yeah.
We could do this. I have this funny feeling, looking at you two smiling, or your faces are going to crack, that we could just keep talking about fun memories. But
Yes.
we actually want to talk a little bit more about some details relative to our goals with our podcast, right? Yeah. Authentic community. You'll hear that a lot. And if you listen to us, you've heard that before. There are so many things in the world impacting men's journeys towards God, away from God. We just had an episode where we're talking about the wind in our face every day.
Yeah.
Right? What are some of the things that lead us towards God and push us away?
Mm-hmm.
You've done so much in your life, Sarge. Read your bio. I was looking at your book, Hope Over Hype.
Yeah.
Right. And we'd love to hear kind of what was the catalyst behind writing that particular book, that topic, and what you had for content there.
Yeah. That's a good question. I wrote Hope Over Hype, and it came out of a place of like, I found, discontentment, like in my own life. Like I felt like everything that was around me and around others at the time. I was a young adults pastor, and so I'd see these guys and these young men and women who were part of the ministry just suffocating under the weight of expectation of like, I've got to be successful, I got to be a 24-year-old billionaire who's got it all together and be on point with every social issue and be in the right in the right in everything. And I just thought that that was suffocating our walk with the Lord more than anything, because we're getting hit by things all the time. And so what does it look like to follow the hope, to choose forever in a world that's demanding right now, everything, ambition,
immediate gratification.
Yeah. So I wrote that book. It came out of that. And I bumped into a guy actually in California right before I wrote that book. And it was a young church planter. He was about 29, I was like this young dude. And I tried to get in touch with him, and he didn't have a cell phone. Like, so it was like, my friend was like, he was my friend's pastor, and he was like, he doesn't have a cell phone. I was like, that's incredibly inconvenient. Like, I was like, right. That's the worst thing to be as a pastor, like unreachable. But
it's our dream.
Yeah.
In life now.
Yeah, and then I meet him, and he's like this amazing guy who just has a lot of time in the right now. Like, he was so present. And I thought to myself, wow, like, first and foremost, like, dude, like, all these questions are coming. Like, do you map quest? Like, how do you get around? Like, how do you find places? But after all of that, I was just so convicted that this thing that I thought I could never live without, and still right now, if you ask me, can you live without your phone? I'd be like, it's touch and go. But but this guy was living his life like that, and it just encouraged me and convicted me that what are the things that I'm holding on to in my life that I think are absolute. And they're not. Life has happened without those things before. So just like focusing on not buying into the hype, not buying into always being exposed to how much or how far you come, and instantly sharing your success, but also, being exposed to everyone winning all day, every day. And,
right.
It was just all of that coming together. How do you choose Jesus? How do you choose Jesus, who's the hope that never fades, and the hype's going to be gone. The hype will disappear.
Sure. Well, you ask an essential question in the book. It actually sounds rhetorical when I first looked at it. It said, what happens when the hype fades?
Yeah.
What were you after there? What were you trying to get people to think about? Because I had some ideas, but I wanted you to tell me.
Yeah, I think at the heart of it, I really wanted people to see what I had seen. What had hit me in the face is that some of the things I cared about 5 years ago, like they don't matter anymore, like at all. Like, it's like they consume me and they don't matter anymore. But the one thing that matters all the time is my spirit, my soul, my relationship with Jesus. And so it was like, what happens? What happens when you kids are a great example.
Yes.
Well, what happens when you threw 18 temper tantrums for a fidget spinner while it's gone? Like, no one wants a fidget spinner now. What happens when it fades? Because even the things that are consuming us as a culture and as a people and as the church too, like they go away. They go away eventually. Smoke machines may not be the play. I don't know if you guys were Christians when they had overheads.
Oh yeah.
Who thought that phase would ever end? Like, the overhead guy was like a position like a staffed guy.
And you had to have an extra bulb.
Yeah,
No extra bulb, you're out.
You had the right words. You had the perfect handwriting, or else, you weren't going to sing Shine Jesus Shine perfectly. So everything is passing. And, the one thing that remains is Jesus. And we can't take our eyes off of that. And I think that leads into authenticity.
It does. And all I can think about right now as you're talking is Instagram.
Yeah.
Right. And, particularly thinking of a few young adult women in my life, world, family, who right from fifth grade through high school, right? Like all about, like you said, how do I get 100 million Instagram followers, right? Like, what does it look like to make billions, doing nothing other than, posting some reels or whatever.
Right.
And and then going through college, and sometime during college, kind of going, yeah, I don't, realizing, okay, that didn't happen.
Yeah.
What now?
Yeah. Yeah.
And kind of almost losing interest appropriately and healthily.
Yeah.
But, when you're talking about the hype fading, I was thinking of them. I'm like, wow, yes. Like I've watched that happen, but what are you left with?
Yeah.
Like what now? And that is because initially I was thinking, gosh, yeah, but what if the hype doesn't fade, right? Like they just continue, and some of us we'll just continue to chase and chase and chase that next dopamine hit or whatever it is, that next potential for popularity, and fame. But so Rob, listen, being from Zimbabwe, and now spending the last 8 years here in the U.S. You mentioned authenticity, and that's where we're kind of turning towards now. What cultural similarities or differences do you see in people's ability to engage in authentic relationship, or even their general appetite for it or disdain for it? Like, what are there cultural differences? Having grown up in Zimbabwe, or is it hey, like men are men, and it's kind of all the same?
Yeah, it's a good question, and to some degree, no matter where you go around the world, people are going to be people, right? Like it's just like there's just these common factors that make us who we are, make us human, and brokenness is one of them. And authenticity and brokenness, guilt and shame, those things, they kind of war against each other. Acceptance, all those things exist in my culture back home.
Sure.
I think one of the big differences is in Zimbabwe, it's more community driven. It's more a community driven culture. So even outside of faith, there's an understanding that we need each other.
Yes.
You can't do it alone, right? You live in community. Like, someone loses their job, and you've experienced it, right? Even in the poorest of poor communities, people don't go without food because your neighbors got you, and when they lose their job, you got them. So I think this real big community focus in the culture makes a difference. And I think here what I've might have noticed as a big difference is that there is, an emphasis on individualism, which I think is good for someone who's just all about like, okay, I just have to be around people all the time, and there's not that space for how can I look within myself and really focus on just me getting better or whatever it is,
just being,
being still, being with the Lord. Like some things are one-on-one, and I just think that's a big difference. And so with the fast pace of life here, to stop and really like spend time with people. And I've noticed this, right? I used to receive missions teams, and they would come to Zimbabwe, and I'm pretty sure you guys you can sense the tension. One of the biggest issues when a missions team from the US comes to Zimbabwe is, you said everything was going to start at 9.
Right.
It's like,
doesn't church start at 9?
Yeah. You come at 9, the sound guy is not even there. Like, there's nothing. It's like
around 9.
Around 9, which is like 11. But but it's one of these things where everything is slower, and understanding that time is a cultural value. Like it's a value. So those differences, like to just take your time with people. Because authenticity comes out of spending time with one another.
That's a great point, and it resonates with me. Because again, even how we started, just sitting under the shade of a mango tree. I mean, there's lots of time. Sitting in that shade. With other brothers or brothers and sisters, and just chatting. And just chatting. It reminds me a little bit of my wife's family in Italy, and dinner is on a daily basis is an event, and it's
wow.
It could be 4 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours into the wee hours of the morning, 2 a.m. Every night.
Yeah.
And what about, Rob, the willingness? You mentioned the brokenness, the willingness to get vulnerable, to get real, to there. You mentioned from a poverty perspective, there's sort of that that common thread in many communities.
Yeah.
So, but from an emotional level, you mentioned guilt and shame. Is there that a willingness? Is it a similarity? To the U.S. Where we're not so quick to go there.
Yeah. I think there's a great similarity there. Because authenticity among peers, I think for example, I can use my dad. I think my dad as a man, watching him when I was growing up, he had these real deep, authentic relationships with his friends. But that authenticity doesn't go beyond that. It doesn't go, father-son relationship. Like, older people are not so open to telling you, hey, even in the community, hey, this is where I've made a mistake. This is, this topic is tense. It's difficult to broach. So we're not even going to talk about it.
Right.
It's part of why, sub-Saharan Africa was ravaged by HIV and AIDS, right? Because people could just not talk about sex. Like, it was just men who couldn't tell young men that, hey, this is a tough conversation, but let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Because, culturally you get authentic to a level. So I found that here, there's greater authenticity in that respect. What I think is a big change is when we enter into a relationship with the Lord, because then, we discipleship is a thing, it's clear in the Bible.
Sure.
And so I think that's when you start to see more authenticity enter in. And I don't know if that's a similarity. I've been here for 8 years. Something surprised me. Like, they take me completely by surprise. I'm like, what? It's a thing? Like, so I don't know how deep or how true this is, but I am a pastor here. So I do know that one of the saddest things is I see people's lives crumble, and I only find out when they're on like the brink.
Yes.
Yes.
It's
like, I've known you for years.
Yeah.
Like, so I see that similarity too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That feeds really well into a question I wanted to ask. The authenticity we're talking about has levels. You said time impacts, and there's a list of things, a formula, almost not scientific formula, but all the things that impact authenticity, just as you said. And some of them are like, I didn't know that about you.
Yeah.
Sarge and I have been rocking this relationship for, we've said live 15, 16 years now.
Yeah.
We're pretty deep into, we've peeled that onion back pretty far.
Yeah.
He's impacted my life, my personal, financial life, my walk with the Lord, just emotionally, so many ways.
Yeah.
Right. And that takes investment. Right?
Yeah.
For you, in terms of impact, now again, some people have good impact in your life and others have, you're challenged by the impact they have. But can you talk about a truly authentic relationship you had that impacted your life in a big way?
Yeah. It's it's awesome to see friendship that's like 15 years strong and those layers peeled away. I love that visual. For me, it really was a friend who came to know Jesus after me. Like, they were part of a church that I wasn't going to, but back in Zimbabwe. And I remember how he described, how he modeled authenticity with me and described that's how he's learning it in the church that he was in, where like almost right out the gate, like the pastor was like, hey, don't try and impress me. Like, like the awkwardness of that. Like, he's just like gone to the pastor's house and like 2 minutes into a conversation, the pastor's like, hold up, don't try and impress me. Just be who you are.
Right.
And like, it's like almost like the air was like taken out the room, by that. Like, I kind of came here trying to impress him,
Sure.
And so once that was gone and repeated, like you repeatedly do that he was like, I just became who I was. Like, I just knew.
What a blessing
I could only be me. And that person modeled that for me. I remember when I was, about to get married, I was engaged. I was getting, cold feet. And I don't know if I was getting cold feet. Like, I was like, oh, am I really ready for this? Or he just came up to me and he just said, hey, listen, man, Like, did the Lord say this is the woman you're going to marry? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, okay, so then be about it. Like, like, what are you doing?
Get after it.
And
Let's
he was
go.
like, yeah. He's like, do it. And he's like, let's carry on watching, sport on TV. Like, it was done. It was like, just, like, kind of be a man. Like, it was like in my face. I was like, what? I was like, that's direct. And, that's the most, that's the guy you go to when you're like,
Right.
in that space. You're
I
like,
love that. There's some things you need to talk about for hours.
yeah.
There's some things you need to talk about for a minute.
Yeah.
I love that.
That's a beautiful story and a great relationship.
Yeah.
In your world now,
Yeah.
as a pastor, what a journey it's been. First of all, we don't even have time to unpack, what that journey's been for you. But, part of your story, coming to the U.S. Was born out of physical brokenness.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Illness.
Yeah.
And do you want to maybe just touch on that?
Yeah.
Briefly, like what happened and like what brought you here?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. The short version is, I'm serving the Lord in Zimbabwe. I've met you guys, and ministry is going well. Life is going well. Just got married, and one day, in ministry, going through life, just found out I was, diagnosed with end-stage kidney failure. I was dying in Zimbabwe. I was dying in the second poorest country in the world, with probably the worst healthcare in the world. And I was sick and dying, and God just moved powerfully through a church in Doylestown, Pennsylvania, who heard I was dying and phoned me and said, listen, man, we're not going to let you die there. Brought me over here, raised $250,000 because, I didn't have insurance. So they raised the money, $250,000. Searched for hospitals to find a hospital that would do a kidney transplant. Found one, paid the $250. I was like, and a young guy, his name is Michael Wartel. I always say his name, always really just thankful to God.
Shout out Michael.
Shout out to Michael, a young guy, 7,500 miles away from where I was, where I lived. He gave me his kidney, and we, had a kidney transplant, and I'm alive today because of what God did through those people. And so that brought me here. And so, in the midst of what looked like spiritual success, like my physical body was breaking down.
Yeah.
And that tension is the one you have to manage, right? God is good. And you're like, God, like, you have the wrong guy. Like,
right.
Like, you send the wrong email here. They're Rob Chifokoyo. I understand, autocorrect, it got you. But I was just in this space where I was just confused. And one of the things that I realized in that, and I just want to touch on that, is some of our worst moments are actually the catalyst to what God has truly called us to. Yeah. Like some of the darkest moments in our lives, the ones that we're trying to hide. I mean, physical brokenness, you can't hide it. But some of that brokenness, it was just like this real truth. Like, hey, God could be using your lowest moment,
yes,
to give you a megaphone,
yes,
to speak to people who may never, ever give you a second to hear about him, to hear about what God has done. He could be doing that. And that's my story,
Listen, man, that is so awesome because as you know, we talk so much about, our emotional brokenness or spiritual brokenness, our own sin and the results of that. Mm-hmm. When we're willing to face that, shine the light on it, heal from it, it can be the very catalyst, the very bridge to not only our wholeness, but to others as well. And, unfortunately, it's just physical brokenness is more socially acceptable than some of our hidden wounds, right? But man, what a great analogy. And it is so true. And just like we heard with Michael Cusick, and Ceaseless Striving, his own story and what God has done through that. And so, man, are we thankful for that church and for Michael. And I know that, I watched God during that time put some people in your path and use some people, the heads of hospitals, right? President of the hospital, getting involved personally, in your story, making things happen, politicians, advocating for you.
Yes.
And it's, man, what, and you know what? Like, I remember thinking, how on earth is he doing this?
Yeah.
How is he and his wife, how are they going through this years of uncertainty?
Yeah.
Years of uncertainty. And in some cases, you're still
Still in
you're
the midst
still
of
in the midst of,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so, but man, like, what an inspiration. So now you're pastoring here. That church ends up hiring you,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And you're a young, you become on the pastoral staff there. And pastors, I don't know about in Zimbabwe, but here pastors find it very challenging to find a foxhole, right? And for many different reasons.
Yeah.
But they're in the spotlight, right?
Yeah.
They're in the spotlight, and oftentimes their foxhole becomes a board, right? A board of elders or something like that, or a couple of people at work at the church, the staff,
Right.
or maybe there's like one or two people in the church that they can kind of begin to build a relationship with, but it maybe never gets to the place where they feel like they can truly be transparent, which is tragic. Now, I've met pastors that do live that way. I can name a couple of them right off the top of my head, and they're free, and their churches thrive and flourish. Yeah. But I would say that most probably don't.
Yeah.
Don't feel free to do that. How have you navigated that challenge? Did you recognize that challenge, and how have you navigated it?
Yeah, I mean, I want to say, where's the duct tape and the hammer?
Yeah, it's right there.
Yeah. I need
Not
that.
far.
I need the duct tape and the hammer.
Yeah.
Look, a part of this is just authenticity, right? And I prayed about coming on this podcast, and because as a pastor, you feel first and foremost, your life has a responsibility to people who may not know you well enough to have a small glimpse into your life, and then accurately balance that with that you're a real person who needs community, who wrestles with sin, and also you're trying to lead. And I think the tension here is you hit the nail on the head there. It's a lonely spot, and if I'm being completely authentic, like, it's been a lonely journey.
Yeah.
At times you find people, other pastors or other people in ministry elsewhere, but like, oftentimes with the board, it's I think something that I wrestle with is how businessy church gets, and how if the metrics are people in seats or impact bigger than last year, it almost kind of feels like that's probably going to be the most inauthentic space. It's my job, how much am I going to be able to rebuke or truly confess where I'm struggling if, my kids are in college and I have to pay them for I have to pay these tuition bills for the next 3 years. You might be going, I'll be authentic in 4 years' time when my kids graduate.
Right.
But this is my job.
Right.
Yeah.
Sure.
So then the relationship with the board to some degree is authentic. And, and if you're the pastor, the staff, they work for you. So they're also seeing that dynamic is also, it takes an incredible leader to foster a relationship with staff where they feel like they can be honest and authentic without losing something, And so we don't do great at modeling that up top, and yet hope that it happens in the pews.
Yeah.
Sure.
And that for me is a wrestle. It's a cry in my own heart because I experienced that, you have to really intentionally pursue relationships. You have to be so intentional, and oftentimes they're outside of your space, outside of your community, because you want to be authentic.
Sure.
And that's tough. It's a wrestle, and I'm finding more and more with other pastors in the season that I'm in now. and I don't want to be, I have to really check my own emotions in this, because I took a lot of time out last year because, everything kind of came to this being unknown kind of came to a head, and it really is suffocating. And it really is a place of like hopelessness. And you find like there are pastors who are leaving, the faith, or they're leaving ministry, or, in some cases, which are tragic, leaving this world. They're like, I'm done with life, because they're so unknown and so isolated. They're the loneliest people in the church, because we're not going, hey, you can come to us. You can be you and still be the pastor. But we want the real you. And so, I say that, like, part of my journey is, I've gone through a physical brokenness, and the Lord brought me out of that. And the physical brokenness, to be honest, it actually increased my faith. It made me more passionate about Jesus. But when the brokenness was internal, and I was in the space of like, oh man, I'm alone, and hopelessness, like that didn't fire up my faith. Like it started to try and quench the things that God had done and God was doing in my life. And so I just, one of the things I think is a cry, if anything, and if in this podcast, I just felt like the Lord was like, hey, listen, you need to be honest with the depths of the pit that you are in, because there are people in that pit.
Sure.
And if you make it look like it was, an easy climb back to the surface, people will never, ever really see how long and strong my arm is to pull them out of that pit. But yeah, it's sad. It's sad.
And we talk about the pit a lot, and we talk about, Spice loves to talk about the pit, right? In the hole. He goes, hey, it's good to be in a hole with you, man. I love that. He talks about the pit, but we talk a lot about jumping in the pit, who's willing to jump in the pit, the Good Samaritan, right? The Good Samaritan, who's willing to kind of stop, jump in the pit and say, all right, now let's figure out a way out together. Right. Rather than, just saying, come on up, climb harder, climb faster. Right. Like, ooh, that's
climb
tough.
over anybody in your way.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for that. I mean, that just so genuine, heartfelt words. Appreciate that very, very much. You know how passionate we are about equipping and encouraging men to find, build, and contribute to authentic Christian community. By the way, I think we have said the word authentic about 4,000 times. We've set the record.
Hashtag authentic.
Thank you. And we've also talked about some key ingredients to building authentic community. But what do you think, in your own words, what's one key ingredient you have to have for that authentic community to thrive?
Yeah, I think you've covered it before on the podcast. And I really believe it's safety. It's knowing that, listen, like, you're going to have to say something incredibly damaging for me to even consider, like, hey, we need to have some space between us. But even that you can say, so that I know that's where you're at. Like, safety is the number one thing. Like, knowing that, hey, listen, I'm in your corner. Like, like we're mates here, and it's a safe place. So you can be for real. And I think safety is one of the most important things. I think that's one of the podcast episodes, I forget who it was, but it's been one of the most impactful ones for me, to see 3 people in a room who are close and then say, hey, listen, this is safe. This is a safe place. You can hear it in the voice. You can hear it in how you are communicating with one another. And that's it. I think it is. I think, and to be honest, I think that's what Jesus did with the disciples. He took messed up guys with the worst CVs, and he knew they were going to mess up again. In fact, they did often. And he just went, I'm still here. Even after he died, he came back from the dead to show Peter that, hey, Peter, I'm still here.
Yeah.
You know,
It's not time to start fishing again.
yeah. He's like, yeah, I'm still here. And I just love that, you know, Jesus creates that. He shows us that in Luke chapter 15, the prodigal son, 99 for one, the very thing. Jesus is saying, guys, I will go after that one lost sheep. Like,
Sure.
I will pursue. I'll turn the house upside down. Like, and I love that. And that's what, you know, makes us safe in our relationship with God. But I believe Jesus is making that, hey, this is what makes you safe in your relationships with one another.
Sure.
And in a time where, you know, cancellation is a thing, you know, people get but we think about it like it's all media and celebrity. People cancel friends.
Oh, listen, there are risks.
Yeah.
The risks are real. And so it also takes courage. It takes, you know, you've got to take those risks, but to provide safety.
Yeah.
To make it easier for those risks to be taken.
Absolutely.
And particularly, you know, in the church, for people in the congregation, for those of you that are in a community of believers, to create an environment of safety for your pastors, and invite that and model that and let them know that their brokenness is welcome. You know, maybe that's something you're called to.
Right.
Yeah.
What you said resonates so much with me. I'm not sure exactly where you heard it on the podcast, but in our pilot episode, we spent some time talking about the Band of Brothers, which is a men's group Sarge and I have been part of, and I have in my basement right outside the door for the last 16 years. Wow. And one of the first things we talk to anybody who walks in the door when we first started 16 years ago, and today, if somebody new shows up, the first thing we tell them is this is a safe place for you. Yeah. Not everybody gets it right away, what that means. Yeah. But it means something to everyone to know that this is a place you can bring your baggage and unload. Yeah. Now, the beautiful thing about it is in 16 years, we're just finishing our 16th season of that meeting. We've never had a single time in this is a community of men that know each other, wives, families, all built around the local church. Yeah. Never had somebody come back and say, I heard. You don't know why I heard? No one has ever talked about.
Or, hey, you said this was a safe place.
Right.
It's
not,
never
come back to us. And I say, praise God.
Praise God, yeah.
Right? That men, telling me it's safe is fine. Yeah. Honoring the safety is a whole other thing. These are just broken regular guys. And many come once, twice, 3 times, never come back. Yeah. Wow. So maybe that level of safety isn't good for them. Because when you hear it's safe, all of a sudden there are some people, it blossomed. They just pour out.
Yeah. Is that like a man code? I mean, is it just like, is it just because it's like, it's just man code? Like regardless of where you are spiritually or emotionally, you're just like, oh, no, he said it's safe. It's safe. I'm not going to be that guy. Right. Right. I'm not going to be that. It's just like, it's just honored. It's just honored.
Yep. Yeah. So that thank you for that answer. Want to just shift gears a tiny bit, because I'm always interested in asking our guests, especially folks that are in the journey you are. You said the season you're in today. Yeah. What's just firing you up today? What is your passion? Tell us something about Rob Future.
Oh man, my passion is the subject at hand. I'm a church planting resident, so I'm thinking about planting a church. That's what I'm looking at in my future. But I'm really thinking about what does it look like to plant a church where people are known. We are known to one another, known to God. We make Jesus known. But just around that word known, like, hey, how do we build a genuine community of believers who know one another? And so that's been something that's been stirring in my heart. It's just, it doesn't leave. It's my screensaver. It's just known, because it's like, I just want to look at that word every day and know, okay, this is it, Lord. I want to be fully known by you, and I want to be known to others. And I want to know other people too. So that's like a big thing. And I see it in scripture all the time. Like God knows us. He's like, I know you. Isaiah 43, he's like, I call you by name. Like, I know you. And so, it's been stirring my heart, no more, hey champ, like we know each other. We use each other's names,
Hey, buddy.
Hey buddy, yeah. Yeah. It's just like,
I hate buddy.
Hey, Captain.
Captain.
Yo.
But it's just being known. It's a passion of mine. And so that's been stirring in my heart. I'm back in school. I'm taking classes in seminary. And so one of the things I love about that is it's showing me things about the Word of God that are just, it's almost like I'm reading it for the first time again. I'm starting to be
It's
like,
beautiful.
oh my goodness, like Jesus is in that story in the Old Testament. Like how? Like, and God just,
Amen. I love
just going,
that.
yeah, I'm just in this plan. It's not new. And that's the whole thing, with Hope Over Hype too. This is not, I got this. I had this from the moment Adam and Eve sinned. Like he's just like, I had it all in motion. Like, no assist yet. No assist needed yet. You know what I mean?
Still got it.
Yeah,
Still got it.
Still got it.
Hey, just in case you didn't realize.
Yeah.
You're just part of a story that's thousands of years old.
Yeah.
Take your place.
It's so true. It's so true. I don't know how much time we have, but I have to say this. I remembered something, my very first concert, you want to know, Zimbabwean, right? Born in Africa, in Zimbabwe. My first concert, I was 5 years old. I went to a Paul Simon Graceland concert. The one they recorded, I was at it. The one, if you look it up on Amazon.
Kidding?
Seriously.
It was in Harare, Zimbabwe, because they couldn't do it in South Africa. And so they filmed it in Harare, and my parents took me. They were big, Simon and Garfunkel fans, I think.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And then a few years later, my mom got the tape. And this is something that is so real to me. My mom got the tape. Back then it'd take years for the tape to come out. Like, oh, you remember this concert 4 years ago? They've got the tape now. And so she brought it home. And all I could think now, I think I was about 8 then, was just look for myself. I was just like, I was like, Paul Simon, great. At the time I didn't appreciate his music, but I was like, I'm just looking for myself. And I watched the whole concert like 18 times trying to find me. And I wasn't in it. I wasn't in it.
I get it.
Because it wasn't Paul Simon and Rob Chifokoyo. It's Paul Simon, Graceland. The camera's focused on Paul Simon. And that's, once we get that, in the story that God's is telling, the story he's revealing through Christ, Jesus is at the center. He's Paul Simon. We're not even Garfunkel. We're not even in the mix. We're not even that close. We're like a 4-year-old Rob in the cheap seats.
Right.
And the camera never panned to me. It's like, it's about him. And once it's about him, it can be about others. And we can live authentically in our faith.
That's a great story.
Beautiful, man. Oh my gosh. Well, we, speaking of time, man, we could sit here and speak and talk for hours. I mean, we could go on and on. We'll have to have you back if you would come.
Oh, I would. Absolutely.
Before we kind of close out, is there a resource or resources that you would share that, men or women would find helpful in their journey, particularly, as they're maybe seeking authentic community or wrestling with, being known. In addition to Rob's awesome book, Hope Over Hype, check it out and buy it. What comes to mind? Is there a particular resource?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this. There's a tiny book by Bonhoeffer, and it's on community, and it's a rich book. I was like thinking about it, and I was like, why don't I have the title? And it's a small book, a short read, Bonhoeffer, and it's on community, and it's one of the richest little books I've read on community. Really challenging, and I think that if there's one thing that I really want to read again, it's that little book, because it did something in my heart. And so I just encourage.
Is it Life Together?
Life Together. Yes, there we go.
Boom. That's awesome. And one other resource that came to mind as you were talking about, just church communities. I'm a big Pete Scazzaro fan.
Oh, yeah.
Emotionally Healthy Church, Emotionally Healthy Leadership, which I just reread last weekend.
Yeah.
Sort of part 1, which deals with the roots and sort of our own being. And I'm like, man, do I need to read this again?
Yeah.
And I just, shout out Pete Scazzaro. I mean, great work. And I know pastors who, have engaged Pete and Jerry, his wife, and their ministry, have them come in and lead, not just work with pastors and their wives, but then with boards or even the broader church.
Yeah.
And it is transformative.
Yeah.
Because it takes you through that journey and almost gives you permission to peel away the layers and say, okay, we can do this.
Yeah.
Together we can do this. As opposed to, the pastor alone trying to create this culture of authenticity,
Yes.
or just a couple of people in the church, but actually doing it as a community.
Yeah.
So if you're a pastor and you're listening and you have not checked that out, I would encourage you.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. Emotionally Healthy Church. Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome book. Yeah.
Yep.
I had one last thing. I don't even know if it's going to be in the episode, but you really got me. You mentioned earlier in another question, you said, Jesus is in that part of the Old Testament. And I want to tell you that resonates with me so much right now because I'm spending a lot of time in the Hebrew Bible and the Old Testament, and I'm reading Leviticus, which could make your head explode at any moment, especially me who can't sit still. But the Bible Project, I'm not even going to look at Sarge when
Shout
I say
out
that.
Bible Project.
Right. Are you familiar with the Bible Project?
Yeah.
I'm a zealot.
They're on our top 10 list, right after Rob Chifokoyo.
Right. I want Tim and John in here
Yes.
because they explained it in a way. If you can get me to understand the Old Testament and how it all leads to a story to Jesus,
Yeah.
they do a phenomenal job. And I just wanted to say, if that's a joyful place for you, the Bible Project can do nothing but help. Watch their videos and podcasts on Leviticus, and it will change how you look at that book and how it ties together.
Yeah.
Bro,
Thank you.
So good to hang out with
so
you, man.
much.
As always, and thank you for coming on.
That was fun. Thank you so much. I love what you guys are doing, and I just pray that God's just going to make this reach the right people, I think, and it has. It's definitely impacted my heart for sure.
That is our prayer as well. And we will have you back. What we'd love to do, today we've covered a pretty broad area.
Yeah.
Hopefully have you back and zero and really laser focus on a topic
Absolutely.
that we can peel the onion back together on.
Absolutely.
We look forward to that.
I'll be here in a heartbeat, guys. In
Awesome.
a heartbeat. Yeah.
Yeah. And may we all rest in simply being known
Yeah.
by the one, right, who matters most.
Amen.
An audience of one.
Yeah.
Thank you, brother. God bless you and be with you as you continue this awesome journey. We'll be on the sidelines cheering, but also kind of running alongside you with a cup of water as you need it. Ready to jump in the pit with you. You're definitely not alone.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. Thanks.
Awesome. Hey, gang, what a great episode with our friend, pastor, speaker, church planter, Rob Chifokoyo. He taught us that it's okay to laugh out loud in church and took us on an inspiring journey from Zimbabwe to Doylestown, Pennsylvania, because of a life-threatening health issue that he had. We covered best pizza in the world, and we looked at his book called Hope Over Hype. We looked at the value of cell phones as an example of things that we're uber focused on but shouldn't buy into the hype, because Jesus is truly the hope that never fades. We talked about the global cultural differences and similarities in men's journey with God. This involved the pace of life, nature of acceptable, authentic conversations, and breaking through barriers that keep us from authentic community. We talked about the impact of truly authentic relationships and how God uses our brokenness for His glory. We unpacked the sensitive topic about pastors and foxholes and their struggle for authenticity, and agreed about the value of safety for men in community, and ultimately, the value of a community of believers who are fully known to each other. I'd like to end with shout-outs to Bob Goff, Paul Simon, Bonhoeffer, Pete Scazzaro, and the Bible Project. Hope you all have a great night. We'll talk again soon.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please share it and invite others to the Foxhole. You can find us wherever you download your favorite podcast. Be sure to subscribe so you know when new episodes drop, and please rate us and comment there too, as it'll help us get found by others who could benefit. Find, follow, and like us on your go-to social media networks by searching Foxhole Symphony, or visit foxholesymphony.com to make it super easy to find us. Drop us a line with feedback, questions, topic requests, who knows? Maybe you'll be a guest on a future episode. In the meantime, prepare to move, embrace discomfort, and just be you.